Manitou Sag Setup Guide. This guide can be used for sag setup on Manitou forks and shocks using air spring technology. First, we'll set up the fork and shock based on the rider's weight and the specific recommendations for each. Then, we'll fine-tune the bike for the rider's preference and style. To find the right setup information, navigate to the frame builder's website and to the Hayes Zendesk site, and search for your products. Assemble these tools and parts and let's get started. Use a zero-loss shock pump for best results. Sag is the amount the suspension compresses under the weight of the rider and gear in their riding position on the bike. This is typically measured as a percentage of the total travel, ranging from 20 to 25% for the fork and 20 to 35% for the rear shock. Before adjusting sag, first watch the setup video for your specific fork and shock. The fork travel will be printed on the back of the air spring leg. Rear shock travel can be found from the frame manufacturer. Your frame manufacturer may have a recommended starting point for your shock setup. If you cannot find the travel measurement, perform these steps. Note the current air pressure. Then release all the air. Then fully compress the suspension. Refill to the noted pressures. Measure the distance in millimeters from the top of the seal to the travel indicator ring. Note, the bottom out bumpers reduce the measured travel slightly. You may have to round up to get the full travel measurement. Measuring sag is best done with the help of a friend. Place the bike on a flat, smooth surface. Ensure the fork and shock are not locked out or set to their climbing setting. Compression should be set to the rider's descending mode. Reset both travel indicator rings by sliding them flush to the seal. Mount the bike and assume the attack position. This is a standing position a rider should be in while riding aggressively. A deep bend in the knees and elbows with heavy feet and light hands. The head and eyes should be up. Without activating either brake, the rider should gently bounce up and down a few times to settle the suspension. Without the rider shifting their weight or activating the brakes, reset both the shock and fork travel indicator rings by sliding them flush with the seal. The rider must now dismount the bike without pressing the fork or shock down further. The helper can gently lift up to minimize the effect of the weight shift while dismounting. Measure the distance between the top of the seal and the travel indicator ring. Note that number in millimeters. Divide that number by the total travel of the suspension. For example, 28 divided by 120 equals 0.233 or 23% sag. Consult the fork-specific setup guide, shock or frame for recommended starting values. Adjust the air pressure and repeat until you get the desired results. The pressures of the fork and shock affect each other. For example, as air pressure increases in the fork, the sag will decrease. But this causes more force on the rear shock, increasing rear sag. Because of this, the procedure should be repeated after every adjustment. Once the sag is properly set, note the pressures and go ride. Reset the travel indicating O-rings on both the fork and shock and go ride. Note the types of trails and riding. Slower riding or mellow trails will not use as much travel as aggressive riding on more difficult trails. After the ride, measure the distance from the top of the seal to the travel indicator O-ring with a metric ruler or caliper. If full travel was achieved, but the ride and conditions did not warrant it, keep that in mind. Divide the travel used by the full travel. 109 divided by 120 equals 91%. 41 divided by 45 equals 91%. In this example, the bike is very balanced. If the percentages are drastically different, consider adjusting the air pressure or air volume to balance it out. This calculation can be used to ensure you are getting the proper amount of travel out of the suspension. You can use this measurement along with IRT and IVA adjustments to ensure the rider has the proper sag and travel used for optimal performance. You have completed the Sag setup for Manitou forks and shocks. Complete setup and service procedures for these products can be found in our other videos. Continue to our YouTube channel and ManitouMTB.com for more information. Thank you for riding with Manitou.